The devil
himself.
The devil himself said, "I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life."
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
Well, Nick Bryant has an interesting post up, the Epstein emails from the very strange to the very, very evil, in which he talks about some of these things. And just right off the top, he talks about one of the released emails here is a group email from Redacted to a group list, subject journalist calling around from 2011. Just a heads up, there is a journalist calling around again. His name is Nick Bryant. This is what he looks like, so you are all aware. So literally an APB, an all points bulletin being put out by the Epstein crew to be on the lookout for Nick Bryant back in 2011, because as my listeners will know, Nick Bryant was one of the OG researchers on this way before the Miami Journal or whatever, or any of those reporters had even heard of this case.
Nick Bryant published Epstein's Little Black Book in 2015, 4 years before the case broke nationally, and he has written extensively on the topic.
Bryant was on it. He was the one who released the Black Book and the flight logs in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. So he's been doing yeoman's work on this subject and the Franklin scandal before it and other work along these lines for decades now. So I recently contacted Nick Bryant to ask him about some of the very interesting emails that he's uncovered and which he has itemized here in this Epstein emails post.
Well, the first category is horrors. I mean, there are a lot of horrors in these emails. I mean, evil of an almost incomprehensible kind. Evil that I have come across before. With the Franklin scandal, there was extreme abuse, and there was also accounts of children being murdered, and we're seeing that with Epstein. And then I've got muffin, steaks, pizza, etc. And then there's power brokers and celebrities. And it turned out that Epstein was trying, Thiel and Musk and Zuckerberg, our favorite humans on the planet, were getting together, and Epstein was wondering, it's an email, and Epstein was wondering if he could make it with those swell guys. Deepak Chopra shows up occasionally. This one's kind of interesting. God is a construct. Cute girls are real. So underneath all that high-powered metaphysical spirituality, Deepak Chopra has a major lower chakra predilections. And then there's kind of an interesting one. David Boy is a super lawyer who represented all the Epstein victims. He was invited to Epstein's Yom Kippur breakfast in 2010.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there.
And then there's kind of an interesting one. David Boy is a super lawyer who represented all the Epstein victims. He was invited to Epstein's Yom Kippur breakfast in 2010. And there's another attorney that represented a number of those victims named Stan Podger, who's very, very
survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking. Co-conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking. Not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI. And it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to the next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to
I
get
want
on
you to
these
watch the
matters.
video.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I'm reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you can't-
Watergate.
when I don't answer a question the
This
way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to know at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
Gentleman is recognized for a UC.
All right. This is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at them.
Without objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from A.G. Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because they're still redacting files.
Chairman, are we going to recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection.
The following program contains disturbing material that may be inappropriate for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
If you want some more of the strangeness in these files, you could turn to Nick Bryant, who you will know as a previous Corbett Report guest for his work with EpsteinJustice.com, which you will know is an organization that is organizing and rallying in support of the Epstein victims and achieving justice for the crimes of Epstein and his Kakistocracy crew. Well, Nick Bryant has an interesting post up, the Epstein emails from the very strange to the very, very evil.
Deepak Chopra shows up occasionally. This one's kind of interesting. God is a construct. Cute girls are real. So underneath all that high-powered metaphysical spirituality, Deepak Chopra has a major lower chakra predilections. And the next category is transhumanism, biohacking, mind control, etc. And that certainly has some interesting emails. And then the next category is FBI, CIA, Mossad. And then there were a couple of emails that didn't quite fit into any other category. So I just said additional strange emails.
Absolutely incredibly interesting list. And this is, of course, only scratching the surface of the 3 million pages of documents that have been released, including many, many emails. Too many for any one human to handle, but let's go through a few of the more interesting ones right here. So, for example, Jeffrey Epstein emailed an unknown individual stating he loved a torture video shared between the two. And you can see, obviously, that you can see the actual emails in the email list, but here's some images of it. And Peter Mandelson, this is just speculation, right? We don't know that that is the name under there, but it just happens to fit.
It does indeed, and he had formerly been the UK ambassador to the United States of America, which is a very prestigious post. And apparently he likes torture.
I loved the torture video. Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. Well, okay. Jeffrey loved the torture video. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know what the person who sent it thought of it, at any rate.
So with this, Mandelson is taking a lot of heat in the UK, and he's had to step down from all his prestigious posts. So actually, there's a minor amount of accountability here.
Something has occurred.
Yes.
Okay, how about this one? If true, this Jeffrey Epstein-oriented email beggars belief. The abuse was off the scale. And we're looking at something from Eddie Aragon and forward confidential Jeffrey Epstein. This is sensitive, so it will be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it as a former staff at the Zorro. And this person is talking about, what is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G. Glenn, presumably. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. And here are the video footage of Jeffrey Epstein, including sex video with minor, Matthew Mellon video, etc., suicide attempt confession, etc., etc. And apparently somebody who claims to have been a former Zorro staffer was attempting to get 1 Bitcoin in return for this information. What do we make of this?
Well, there's other very, very dark emails that allude to homicides. So did this happen? I mean, that's the question. If you look at the totality of emails and just the amount of blood that's just dripping off of them, an email like this doesn't really seem that far-fetched in that context.
Yeah, no, it certainly doesn't. It's par for the course, unfortunately. All right, let's look at this one from forward to J.E.E. Epstein regarding Richard Johnson. This is from Mark Tramo. And what are we looking at here? Thanks for sending Richard Johnson my way. I trust the kind words I shared with him are acceptable, etc., etc. Was just reading to today that newborns will suck on a pacifier more vigorously if it triggers playback of a recording of her/his mother's voice than another woman's voice. Have you read David Brooks's Social Animal? What are we looking at here?
Well, if it's talking about ways to get babies to suck harder in a very malevolent kind of way, I mean, this is rarefied evil.
They blacked out the name of the person who sent Epstein an image labeled age 11. Why protect the predator? And yes, this is an email from the archives sent from somebody. We don't know. Just labeled age 11, full-size render.jpg. So this is an image file. The image file itself, obviously not released, question mark.
And here's the thing. The media and the government have said that Epstein's youngest victim was 14 years old, but I've heard accounts of victims that are much younger. There's an Australian newspaper called The Age. I think it's out of Sydney. It's a daily. They spent a lot of time in the Virgin Islands, and they said that the youngest victims there were 11 or 12. Virginia Giuffre submitted an affidavit that talked about various perpetrators, and she said that she'd attended orgies where the youngest girl was 12, and most of them couldn't speak English. But I know a couple of therapists, and one's a pretty eminent psychologist, and both have counseled Epstein victims who were trafficked when they were under the age of 10. So I know that this is going to be that somebody's going to try to clean this up. But because it's very strange people think that like 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds have agency. I mean, that's how they've kind of justified it in their mind with regards to Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't feel that way. But when you get into 11-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 9-year-olds, I mean, how can they possibly have agency? So that's, I think, one of the things that really needs to be broken open here is that these guys were psychopaths. And we saw it in the Franklin scandal, too. The two primary pimps were into pubescent boys. But if you wanted a 7 or 8-year-old, they didn't have a problem getting you a 7 or 8-year-old. So, I mean, they're psychopaths. It's not like they've got a conscience to deal with. So with this, and that's another thing where the mainstream media has really shortchanged Americans, is they made Epstein and Maxwell seem kind of glamorous, living on the Upper East Side, traveling all over. But human traffickers are vicious people, whether they're living in a mansion on the Upper East Side or they're living in a trailer court in the Midwest. Human traffickers are vicious, vicious people.
As we talked about, Deepak Chopra to Epstein, God is a construct, cute girls are real. And this person notes they're all in on it. The entire world is a stage. So yes, sorry to any Deepak Chopra fans out in the crowd who might have held out hope. One more. Again, there's dozens of links in this document that we're linking up here, but let's take a look at one more. Evidence of the presence of American laboratories for the development of biological weapons in Ukraine has been found in the Epstein files, as previously reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on numerous occasions, but of course derided as crazy Russian conspiracy theory. And here are the emails themselves. Yeah, a lot of biological, scientific papers and documents and emails and things in these records that we're finding, aren't there?
There's gene editing. There's doing very strange things to babies. There's cloning. And cloning is a reality. People in New York City clone their French bulldogs for $65,000. And I think you can clone a human for about $1.5 million. When Dolly the sheep was cloned in the mid-90s, I actually had written some articles for Genetic Engineering News, which was one of the papers that broke that. And it's very easy to clone. You just have to get an ovum and take the DNA out of the ovum and stick the DNA that you want cloned in the ovum and then give it an electrical charge. Sometimes the charge will start mitosis and the cells will start splitting, and sometimes they won't. But it's very easy to clone. And back then, even before I got into the Franklin scandal and all this dark, malevolent stuff, I thought to myself, there's got to be megalomaniac billionaires out there cloning themselves. So that was when I saw his thing was about cloning and transhumanism, I kind of figured that would be a natural outcome.
Yeah. Of course. If you can imagine it and we have indications of it, then it is probably already happening. And here are some more indications of that. And as I say, these are just a few of the emails of the ones that you have highlighted from the literally thousands and tens of thousands that we've just been flooded with. So there's much, much more to go through. But let's talk about, obviously, I know that you work at EpsteinJustice.com, working for and with the survivors and victims of these crimes. What are the people in your network saying about this latest file release and what is or is not happening as a result of it?
Well, it's daunting. All these emails with so much evil, I mean, it's daunting. And people that have been victims of sexual abuse that have been traumatized, I mean, this is very hard stuff for them to read. And there's 3 million documents that have yet to be released. I mean, these are bad, but you can only imagine how bad those are. But
so what is the next step for Epstein Justice then? How do we continue putting pressure to get those documents?
It's waking people up. I mean, Epstein Justice is growing. When we first started talking about Epstein Justice, we had just started. And I'd been a writer my entire life. I'd never, I'd never been a director of 501c3. I'd never even worked for a 501c3. And the people that wanted to do this with me, none of us had any kind of experience working with a 501c3. But we just felt like this is something we had to do. So now we have a plan. Well, we've always had a plan for the Independent Congressional Commission. And that does not require a presidential signature. It just requires a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. And independent congressional commissions generally hire non-government personnel to help them with investigations. And that's what we're going to need. If this thing ends up in a subcommittee, it's going to die, for sure. The only chance that we have for truth with this is an independent congressional commission that is completely devoid of any executive signature. It's going to take a lot. Together, Epstein Justice, we're putting together Facebook groups by state, and we're having those respective groups put pressure on their legislators. Now, they cannot feel our pressure yet, but as these groups grow and grow, and they are growing, as they continue to grow, these legislators will start feeling the heat from an inundation of emails and phone calls. And that's the only way that you can get a politician to act, is if they feel fear.
Please go to James Corbett's channel at thecorbettreport.com, which in my humble opinion is the best channel on YouTube. He's the humblest, most generous, hardworking, honest journalist on this platform. Thanks, James. Stay blessed. Peace.
If we walked into that clinic where they're giving that money out to these people that are in the most dire straits of poverty and sickness, and told them that the money was coming from a, what are you, class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
Was tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm the lowest. I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Yes.
That the money came from them. What percentage of people do you estimate? I understand you don't like probabilities. Do you estimate would say, I don't care, I want the money for my children?
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
I think if you told them, if I told them the devil,
100%.
the devil himself said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
Once again, that is Nick Bryant of EpsteinJustice.com. And for anyone interested in Epstein Justice, I suggest you go to their website. You can find out more about the regular webinars that they do on an ongoing basis to train people in activism and how they can raise awareness about this issue. And they have various campaigns that they are involved in on an ongoing basis. Again, trying to achieve justice for these crimes.